I'm Emma, and a year ago, I would have laughed if someone told me that my own family would abandon me. It was unthinkable that they'd believe the words of my half sister Leah, a girl known for drama and manipulation, over me. But that's precisely what happened. Now, as I look back on everything, I can see that what began as a string of lies would escalate into a complete shattering of the life I had known. Leah is my half sister, born from my father's marriage to my stepmother, Margaret, a few years after my own mother and father divorced. When I was about 10, Leah came along and my father remarried soon after. From the start, she was my father's princess. And in many ways, she became the apple of Margaret's eye as well. Margaret raised me, and I had a good enough relationship with her, but Leah was clearly the golden child in their eyes. Leah's presence was always intense, and over time, I saw how she thrived on attention, and if she wasn't getting it, she'd do whatever she could to secure it. It started innocently enough. Her insistence on being the loudest in the room or the center of every family event. We weren't exactly close, but I still tried to be a good big sister, looking out for her and helping her with small things when she asked. At first, the little digs she made about me seemed harmless, maybe even things that a typical sibling would say. Emma's acting weird lately, or Emma's staying out too late, don't you think? Those comments were the start of something that would turn sinister. I was 24 and living on my own at the time, navigating the uncertainty that comes with post-college life. I was struggling to find steady work in a field that felt right for me, and I was doing everything I could to make sense of my future. It was hard, but I had a vision. Yet, I didn't know that Leah's insidious lies were spreading like a virus, infecting the minds of everyone in our family. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. It all started with a phone call from my father. I could tell immediately that something was wrong. His voice had that sharp edge, tense and closed off, unlike anything I had heard from him before. "Emma," he said, "we need to talk. Can you come over?" I tried to ignore the cold, sinking feeling in my stomach as I agreed. I'd hoped it wasn't as serious as it sounded, but I had no idea just how serious it would be. When I arrived at their house, I found Margaret already seated on the couch, her arms crossed in a way that instantly set me on edge. Leah was sitting next to her expression serene, eyes wide and innocent, which made me even more nervous. This wasn't how my family usually looked at me, but then again, this wasn't a usual situation. I tried to gauge what was going on, but the tension in the room told me all I needed to know. "Emma," my dad began without much ceremony, "I need you to be honest with us." He looked at me, his eyes narrowing with doubt. "Are you doing drugs?" It was so absurd that I actually laughed. "What?" "No, of course not. Where is this coming from?" I looked to Margaret, but her face was severe, unmoved by my response. She didn't say a word, but Leah piped up in a quiet, sorrowful tone. "Emma, I didn't want to bring this up, but when you stayed over last weekend, I found pills in your room. I was worried." The ground felt like it was slipping out from under me. "What are you talking about, Leah? You never went into my room, and there's nothing in there." But as I spoke, I could see doubt flickering across their faces. The lie had already taken root, and my words seemed to bounce off of them, unheard. Margaret shook her head, her face twisted with suspicion. "Leah told us you've been hanging around with questionable people too, Emma. Are you selling yourself?" Hearing that from my stepmother, the woman who raised me, made me feel like I'd been punched in the gut. No, I would never. How could you even think that? I was too stunned to say anything more. My pleas of innocence were lost in the thick web of lies Leah had already spun around me. My father's face softened for a moment, as if he wanted to believe me, but then Leah leaned in, her voice sickeningly sweet. Emma, I'm just worried about you. You're not the same as you used to be, and I thought you might need help. She looked at me with those innocent, wide eyes, as if she were genuinely concerned. That was the final straw. I shot up from the couch, my fists clenched. You're lying, Leah. You're making all of this up because you can't stand it when someone else is getting any attention. But Margaret was already on her feet, ushering me toward the door, as if I were some stranger who'd wandered in from the street. Enough, Emma. You need to leave until you can be truthful with us. We love you, but we have to take a step back. That's when I realized they were telling me to go, telling me that I was no longer welcome in their home. Leah had managed to turn my own family against me with nothing more than a few well-placed lies. Numb, I left the house, unable to fully comprehend what had just happened. I felt like I'd been thrown out of my own life. Leah's deception had shattered my world, leaving me without support and without anyone to turn to. I tried to process it, to find a way to fight back, but everywhere I went, her lies followed me like a shadow. Leah's stories only grew from there. She told people in town that I was an addict, that I was involved in all sorts of illegal things. Even my boss heard the rumors, and before I knew it, I'd lost my job. My friends stopped calling, stopped answering texts. Leah's lies were not just isolating me from my family, they were destroying every piece of my life. Desperate, I tried to reach out to Leah, to confront her directly, hoping she'd admit her lies, or at the very least stop spreading them. But every time I tried, she twisted the situation to make me look unstable, irrational, or worse. My father even called me at one point to tell me, Emma, it's best if you stay away. Leah has had enough to deal with. Enough to deal with? What had she dealt with, aside from the thrill of seeing my life unravel? I couldn't take it anymore. I had no choice but to leave. I packed what little I had left and moved to a new city, trying to put distance between myself and the devastation Leah had caused. I thought maybe I could start over, but Leah's lies had already stained everything. Months passed, and though I tried to forget, I still felt the weight of what Leah had done. Sometimes I'd think about reaching out to my father, to try one last time to make him understand. But each time, I remembered the way they'd looked at me, as if I were nothing more than a stranger with a bad reputation. And I knew that even if I tried, things would never be the same. Years went by, and eventually, I found a new life. I made friends, found work, and eventually even met someone who accepted me completely. His name was Noah, and he was the best thing that had ever happened to me. Noah never pushed for answers about my family, though he knew they weren't in my life. He didn't need to know every detail to understand how much pain I'd been through. One day, after years of dating, Noah proposed. The joy I felt was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. We planned a small, intimate wedding, keeping the guest list short. I wanted it to be simple, just about us, a new chapter that left all the pain behind. But then 6 months before the wedding, I got an email from my father. I stared at it for what felt like hours before finally opening it. He wrote about how much he missed me, how he thought of me every day. "I know we made a mistake," he said. "I want to make things right. I heard you're getting married, and I'd love to walk you down the aisle. Please, give me a chance to apologize." His words dug into an old wound, reopening everything I'd tried to bury. For days, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I sat Noah down and finally told him the whole story, every painful detail. He listened quietly, his face calm but supportive. "You don't owe them anything," he said gently. "Emma, you don't have to let them back in if you're not ready." It was exactly what I needed to hear. After some thought, I responded to my father's email, telling him that while I appreciated his apology, I wasn't ready to forgive him. However, I told him he could attend the wedding if he understood that our relationship could never be the same. Margaret and Leah, however, were not welcome. 2 days later, he called. At first, I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to answer. His voice was soft, almost pleading. "Emma," he said, "thank you for letting me come. But can't you let Leah attend too? She wants to make amends." I felt my heart tighten. "No, Dad. Leah is not invited. You know why." "She's your sister, Emma," he replied, his voice tinged with desperation. "She's changed. She's sorry for what she did." His words only rekindled my anger. "Leah ruined my life, Dad. You and Margaret believed her lies, and I lost everything because of it. She can't just show up at my wedding and pretend it never happened." There was a long silence, and then he spoke again, his voice resolute. "Emma, if Leah can't be there, then I can't come. Family is about forgiveness." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was choosing her again. I swallowed, my voice thick with emotion. "Goodbye, Dad." I hung up, feeling an odd mixture of sadness and relief. I had always hoped he'd choose me, that he'd finally see the truth. But he never did.